Welcome to the first staged reading for the Columbia Drama Club of the 2020-2021 season. We present to you Pirates, a comedy in one act by Colin Campbell Clements, first performed in 1922. The play takes place in Mrs. Warren's little living room during the early Victorian period. At the left is a door leading to another part of the house. A door at the back opens into the entrance hall. As the curtain rises, Mrs. Warren, seated in a large chair, is talking to her maid, Clara.
Gossip is malicious, my dear girl, positively malicious. Doesn't the Bible say?
The knocker sounds.
There, isn't that the door? Oh,
Clara
Clara,
starts.
before you go, open the door. Be sure and dust off the table in the hall and...
Clara goes out. Mrs. Warren arranges her dress and the little lace cap on her head.
It's Mrs. Lloydie, ma'am.
Oh, the dear soul. Have her come right in, Clara.
Clara goes out. Mrs. Lottie enters.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Mrs. Warren.
Good afternoon, my dear. Do sit down, Mrs. Lottie. Do sit down.
Oh, thank you. I have just dropped in for a moment. I am on my way to the meeting of the Helping Hand Society, and as I had to pass by this way, I just came in to see how you were. I hope I'm not interrupting any work you might be doing, my dear.
Oh, dear, no. I was just giving my maid a little lecture on gossip.
Gossip?
It is so malicious.
Positively unladylike. One could almost compare a lady who gossips to a pirate.
Oh, dear. What? What, Miss Lottie?
A pirate. They are sort of wild thieves, you know, and steal things from perfectly innocent people, Mrs. Warren. The South Sea Islands are full of them. Pirates, I mean. Why, I read in our missionary paper just last week that one poor man was overtaken by pirates who took away his watch and, I hesitate to say it, his trousers.
His trousers? Oh, dreadful, dreadful.
The rest of the story is too indelicate to repeat.
Yes, some things are often better left unsaid. But one need never be ashamed to speak the truth. What is the rest of the story, Mrs. Lottie?
The poor man was forced to come into port with a bad cold in his head and in his pajamas.
Oh.
And that is why I call a woman who gossips a pirate.
Yes. Though one can hardly think of any woman unlawfully taking a poor gentleman's trousers.
Hardly. But to steal one's good name is to take one's cloak of righteousness, so to speak. And oh my dear, few people can face the world without it. The soul is so much more important than the body.
One should keep both properly clothed.
Yes, though on the South Sea Islands, the people there wear nothing but grass skirts.
One could hardly do that in England.
Oh, but the people there in the South Seas are pure of mind. And so it is one of the very first rules of the Helping Hand Society that no gossip shall pass our lips.
Such a worthy organization. I am sure the ladies of Northampton are doing a noble work.
Oh, yes, indeed, Mrs. Warren. Why, only last week we sent off a large box of soap to the natives of East Africa, and now we are getting a box of napkins and tablecloths ready. We are doing such splendid work for our less fortunate brothers and sisters in a far land.
My dear, I shall have Clara make you a hot cup of tea. It will rest you. Clara!
Oh, no, thank you. Really, I mustn't stop. I always like to get to the society meetings early. Otherwise, one misses so much that is interesting.
Clara appears.
Never mind, Clara. Oh, Clara!
Yes, ma'am?
Clara, will you put the water on to boil and make the tea rather strong, but not too strong, just so.
Yes, ma'am.
She goes.
By the way, have you met the new doctor and his wife, Mrs. Warren?
Yes, I have called on Mrs. Hunter.
Oh, really? How interesting.
But of course, Betty knows both of them. I must call on Mrs. Hunter again, but I get out so seldom now, so seldom. I'm so afraid to walk on the new pavement, I believe they call it. Betty is very fond of both of them. The Hunters, I mean.
Quite. Though Mrs. Romney told Mrs. Pickering, who told me, that the Hunters did not get along well together. It seems she's a Church of England woman, while the doctor is the son of a Scotch Presbyterian. So, of course, they
Though
would.
I believe they have been married all of 5 or 6 years.
Oh, really? I did not know that. How interesting. I must tell Mrs. Rodney. But Mrs. Lauer told me that the doctor calls Mrs. Hunter dearest in public.
Such poor taste. Oh,
I always suspect a man who is over demonstrative in public.
but of course, one.
Betty comes running in, her arms full of daisies.
Mother dear, oh, good afternoon, Miss Lottie. See the wonderful flowers Dr. Hunter just gave me.
Dr. Hunter gave you those?
Dr. Hunter.
Yes, his garden is full of them. Aren't they beauties?
But you hardly know him well enough to.
You see, we are getting acquainted. He was on his way to see Miss Hallway and
Is she ill again?
rheumatism, not really serious.
Oh, really?
And as the doctor was coming this way, he walked to the gate with me. We had a lovely chat. Dr. Hunter is such an interesting conversationalist.
Walking. Hasn't he a carriage?
Oh, yes, but it is such a wonderful day for walking.
I dare say that all depends on with whom one is walking.
Betty, you don't really mean to tell me that you walked down a public highway with a strange man?
Why, Mother, he isn't a strange man. I know both Doctor and Miss Hunter.
But such a short acquaintance, and to be walking with him in broad daylight.
What would you have me do? Walk with him after dark?
Oh,
I really must be going, Mrs. Warren. I must not be late to the meeting, no. And perhaps you would rather be alone with your daughter at this time? Good afternoon, Mrs. Warren. Good afternoon.
good afternoon, Miss Lottie.
Goodbye.
Mrs. Lottie goes out. Mrs. Warren waits until the front door slams before she speaks.
Betty, how could you?
But, Mother,
Walking with a man who is married and not on the best terms with his wife, accepting flowers from him, a Presbyterian unchaperoned. Oh, it is so unbecoming, so unladylike, not to say indiscreet. Oh, why, when I was a girl.
I know, but things have changed since then, dear.
Not in Northampton, thank heaven. Here, at least, we still keep some of the old propriety. Oh, Betty, this bold indiscretion of yours would have killed your poor dear father. Oh,
Perhaps that's what did. Too much propriety.
did you say something, dear Betty?
I am sorry, dear, truly sorry if I have caused any anxiety.
We must cultivate the doctor's wife at once. There must be no room for gossip among the ladies of Northampton.
Cultivate Miss Hunter? Oh, I would love to. She is a delightful person. Don't you like her, Mother?
She seems very nice, but of course one must be very careful about strangers.
She is very fond of outdoor life and all that sort of thing. Oh, she is a regular sport.
Betty, let me never hear such a remark from you again. Sport.
The knocker sounds.
Oh, dear me. I wonder who that can be.
If you don't mind, Mother, I shall go up to my room. I want to do a watercolor sketch of these flowers before they die.
Stop here a bit, Betty.
Clara
It's
enters.
Mrs. Romney, ma'am.
Oh, do have her right come in, Clara. And Clara, serve the tea at once.
Clara goes.
Mrs. Romney, oh dear, such a bombastic sort of person, so to speak.
She was educated in London, you know.
Yes, poor dear. She has so much to live down. It must be dreadful to have been educated in London, such a naughty place. Think of the dreadful environment, my dear London. Oh,
Mrs. Romney enters.
Good afternoon, Mrs. Warren. How do you do, Betty dear?
do sit down, Mrs. Romney.
Did I hear you speaking of London as I came in, Mrs. Warren?
London? Speaking of London, were we speaking of London, Betty? Oh, yes, I believe I did say.
Oh, dear old London. How I long for it.
But my dear Mrs. Romney, London surely hasn't the refinement of Northampton.
Northampton? Why, this place is as far from the world as the South Sea Islands.
Mrs. Romney, how can you even think of such a thing? Why, in the South Sea Islands, I am told the people wear nothing but straw skirts, and pirates take things, unmentionable things, from innocent travelers. One could not accuse the people of Northampton of such things. Even our shopkeepers are gentlemen compared to those dreadful pirates.
Well, the people of the South Sea Islands are at least interesting.
Perfect savages.
But my dear, all our forefathers were savages, you know.
Oh dear.
And the longer I live in Northampton, my dear, the more I'm convinced that it wasn't so very many generations ago either.
Oh, Betty, you may go. You will excuse the dear child, I am sure. She has duties to perform which...
Oh, yes, certainly.
Good afternoon, Miss Romney. Shall I see you at Miss Hunter's tea Thursday?
Yes, dear, charmed.
Goodbye.
Mrs. Romney bows. Betty goes out left as Clara enters with the tea things.
You will have a cup of tea, Mrs. Romney.
Yes, thank you so much. So refreshing. Nothing like tea for the nerves, is there really? Half a cup. I have just come from Mrs. Hunter's. Both cream and sugar, yes, thank you. Such a charming lady, Mrs. Hunter. Perfectly charming, my dear. Perfectly charming. Why, so witty and clever, so vivacious, but dreadfully jealous.
Jealous? Jealous of whom?
Well, she's very fond of her husband.
Of whom? Of whom is she jealous?
No one in particular at present, I think.
Oh.
That is, is there any cause for her being jealous of any particular person, Mrs. Warren?
No, not that I know of.
How uninteresting. The doctor is such a charming gentleman. Dear me, I do hope I will have another attack of indigestion or something of that sort. I am sure Dr. Hunter would be such a splendid physician. He's so good looking. Dear me, I must be going. I'm on my way to the meeting of the Helping Hands Society and...
Yes, Miss Lottie has just gone. She dropped in to see me for a moment.
Mrs. Lottie, that one. Oh, I'm not speaking to her.
Oh dear, you really don't mean you have quarreled? So unladylike.
Ladylike? Ladylike? Ladylike be damned.
Oh, Mrs. Romney!
Oh, Mrs. Warren, I beg your pardon. I forgot for a moment to whom I was speaking.
That was quite evident.
Quite. But you see, Mrs. Lottie told Mrs. Pickering, who told Mrs. Lauer, who told Lady Bolshire, whose maid told my maid, that Mrs. Lottie said that I dyed my hair. Dyed my hair! I have never dyed my hair. The impertinent gossip.
Do have another cup of tea, Mrs. Romney. It is so soothing.
Oh, thank you. Just a little sugar, please, and no cream.
There, my dear.
Lovely color, isn't it?
Yes, isn't it? Mr. Warren, dear man, once told me that the natives of India use tea for dyeing.
Hair?
No, cloth, I believe.
Oh, well, how interesting.
I believe they use the henna berry for dyeing hair in the East. I am told it gives a beautiful soft auburn shade.
How interesting. Does one procure it from one's pharmacist?
Oh, yes, I believe so.
I must try it on my hair. Oh dear, I mean,
What did you say, Mrs. Romney?
I said I really must be going, my dear. One never seems to realize how fast the time goes when one talks with you. Our little visit has been most interesting and most instructive. I do want to stop in for a minute to see Mrs. Hallway before I go to the meeting of the Helping Hand. Her rheumatism is worse again, poor dear.
Yes, so I heard. I'm so sorry.
Oh, it's not at all serious. Just a touch, I believe. Of course, she did call in Dr. Hunter, but I really believe it was simply to get acquainted with him more than anything else. Do drop in and see me when you can. Good afternoon, Mrs. Warren.
She goes out as Clara enters.
Shall I take away the tea things, ma'am?
No, not just yet, Clara. Someone else may drop in, and perhaps Betty would like a cup of tea.
Shall I call her, ma'am?
Yes, I believe you had bet.
The knocker sounds.
There. See who that is, Clara.
Clara goes into the hall, but returns immediately.
It's Mrs. Pickering, ma'am.
Have her come right in, Clara.
Shall I call Miss Betty, ma'am?
Yes, do have her come down and have a cup of tea.
Clara goes out as Mrs. Pickering comes into the room.
How do you do, Mrs. Warren?
Oh, good afternoon. Do sit down, Miss Pickering.
Oh, my dear Mrs. Warren, I am so glad to see you looking so well. I thought perhaps, of course, there is much sickness in Northampton now. Much sickness. I just met Mrs. Lottie, and she told me that Mrs. Holloway is almost dead with rheumatism. Almost dead. In fact, they hardly expect her to live much longer. Of course, Mrs. Lottie didn't say so, but I implied as much from the tone of her voice.
I heard it was nothing really serious.
Oh dear, yes, very serious. I just had it from Miss Lottie, who had it from a most reliable source. Rheumatism is such a painful death, too. Oh dear, poor soul. Poor soul. Oh, thank you so much.
I believe the new Dr. Hunter is attending her.
Yes, isn't it too bad? Mrs. Lottie tells me he's a conversationalist or something dreadful of that sort. But of course, he was educated in London. And, my dear, London's standard of morals is not the same as Northampton's. I was told that he treats his wife very badly in public, my dear. In public.
You mean?
My dear Mrs. Warren, I am very sorry to tell you, but I feel it is my duty as the wife of your pastor to tell you that your daughter Betty has been seen this very often, that is, at least once, walking with this Dr. Hunter. And also, my dear Mrs. Warren, she accepts presents from him, flowers and that sort of thing.
I'm sorry, I lost my place. She hardly knows him.
That's just it. She hardly knows him, nor do any of us. Also, remember, he is a married man, my dear Mrs. Warren, and very good-looking. And I really believe all good-looking people are bad, thoroughly bad.
I can't believe that, Betty.
Naturally, my dear, naturally, you are her mother and wish to shield her, but I felt that it was, as I said before, my duty to tell you all I know of the facts of the whole matter.
You quite alarm me, Mrs. Pickering.
Oh, young girls nowadays are sometimes, I might say, sometimes indiscreet.
Oh,
My dear, men are such strange beings. Oh, the poor souls that have been lured to their destruction by men. I am always reminded of that beautiful passage in Genesis which says that woman was made after man. And isn't it our dear Mr. Browning who says second thoughts are always best? Oh, there now, I really must be going, Mrs. Warren. I am on my way to the meeting of the Helping Hand Society, and I really mustn't be too late. I hope I have not over-alarmed you, Mrs. Warren, but as one of your oldest friends and as the wife of your pastor, I feel that I must always do my duty, no matter how painful. When the way lies open before me, I certainly hope you will not feel that I have been peremptory, so to speak, Mrs. Warren.
no, no. It is very kind of you to come to me in this sad moment of trouble.
Oh, I do hope that you will be able to attend the service tomorrow morning. Mr. Pickering has written a beautiful sermon on the evils of gossip. A beautiful sermon. I feel that it is the best thing he has written in all of 40 years of his righteous work. I am sure it will thunder down the ages as his masterpiece. The sentiment, the beautiful English, and even the punctuation are really marvelous. Of course, Mr. Pickering and I both realize that there is very little gossip in Northampton, but it is best to know sin when one encounters it. Good afternoon, Mrs. Warren.
Good afternoon.
Mrs. Pickering goes out. Clara enters.
I have brought the hot water, ma'am.
Did you call Betty?
I knocked at her door, ma'am. I knocked very loudly, ma'am, but got no answer.
I am so distressed, Clara. See if she's in the garden. Yes, she must be in the garden. And Clara, do tell her to come in and see me at once. I want to talk to her. It is very important. Oh, most important that I see her at once, Clara.
Knocker sounds.
See who that can be, Clara. Oh, more dreadful news, I fear.
Clara goes into the hall as Mrs. Warren keeps mumbling to herself.
Most discerning, most dreadfully discerning.
Clara re-enters.
It is Mrs. Lauer, ma'am.
What? Who did you say?
Mrs. Lauer, ma'am?
Mrs. Lauer. Oh, do have her come right in, Clara.
Clara goes out as Mrs. Lauer enters the room.
Good afternoon, Mrs. Warren. Good afternoon. How ill? I mean, how worried. Oh, how worried you are looking, Mrs. Warren. Oh, I am so sorry for you. So very sorry. Oh, I have just seen Mrs. Romney. Oh, who had just seen Mrs. Lottie and had the dreadful news from her. I am so sorry, Mrs. Warren.
But what?
Oh, but of course, we who have known you for all these years, oh, will be as silent as the tomb. Oh, you can depend on us, lean upon us, oh, call upon us.
Why?
We shall comfort you and be your support in this hour of greatest need.
Why? Why? What do you mean?
Well, you really mean to say you don't know about Betty and Dr. Hunter? Oh, dear.
But Betty did nothing so very improper.
Improper? Well, of course. We shall not blame poor Betty. She's still very young, but we do believe and blame that wicked Dr. Hunter. Why, he's a married man, my dear. Oh, and oldish. Oh, he should have known better.
But Betty only walked with him.
Only walked with him? Well, I was told that he sends flowers to Betty. And flowers have secret meanings. To say the least, they are sentimental. And Mrs. Lottie told Mrs. Romney that she heard Betty say with her own lips that Dr. Hunter was a conversationalist. I believe that means a person with very free ideas about personal matters, love, and that sort of thing.
No, indeed. It simply means that he is a very interesting talker.
Well, that's just it, Mrs. Warren. What does he find so much to talk about? I mean, I have never met him, but from things that I've heard, well, I believe he must be a dreadful person. Most unwholesome, so to speak, to the society, the very refined society of Northampton, where for the last 40 years we have all lived in such perfect peace and understanding.
Oh, that this should come upon me.
Oh, well, your misfortune is our misfortune, Mrs. Warren. We should do everything we can to keep this dreadful scandal.
Scandal? Has it gone as far as that?
Well, let's just say indiscretion. As I was saying, we should keep it locked in our hearts. No word of it shall ever reach foreign ears. Of course, I really know very little about this whole affair, but I felt that my first duty was to come to you.
Clara enters.
Yes, Clara.
I can't find her, ma'am.
Oh, do find her, Clara. I must see her at once.
The knocker sounds.
Who can that be? Clara, see who's at the door.
Clara goes.
Oh, Mrs. Warren, trust me in everything. Are you sure Betty has always been what she seemed? I mean.
Mrs. Lauer, do you mean to say that Betty Warren, my daughter?
My dear, now we must face the truth. We must prepare ourselves for the worst. We must.
Clara enters.
It's them helping hands, ladies, if you please, ma'am. The whole lot of them.
Bring them in, Clara. Have them come right in. Oh.
Now, you must be calm, my dear. Very perfectly calm.
Mrs. Lawty, Mrs. Pickering, and Mrs. Romney re-enter from the hall.
Oh, dear ladies, do be seated.
They all sit down quietly. There is a long pause. Mrs. Pickering moves restlessly.
Mrs. Warren, we have adjourned our meeting of the Helping Hand until next week in order to come to you. The poor dear natives of the South Sea Islands will have to wait another week for their napkins and tablecloths.
A very short time, considering they have not had such necessary luxuries for several centuries.
Still, it is with some feeling of regret that we left our work of altruism unfinished until next week.
But we feel that our first duty is at home. Yes, we all felt that our duty was towards you, Mrs. Warren, at present.
Ladies, I am overcome with your kindness.
We shall now consider ways and means of helping you, Mrs. Warren, out of this unspeakable, or let us say embarrassing situation.
Let us rather call it unfortunate situation.
No matter what we call it, let us get on.
The facts are these. Mrs. Lawty tells us she heard Betty, with her own ears, openly say that the man under consideration, Dr. Hunter, was a revolutionist and...
I said conversationalist, though he is probably both.
I think she must have meant conventionalist.
Nevertheless, one is as bad as the other. They all go hand in hand.
But I believe Betty only said he was a good conversationalist and...
Anyway, she said he talked a lot about it.
I fear it must be one of those dreadful, sinful new religions one hears out nowadays.
Oh.
Also, we understand from the very reliable sources that Mrs. Hunter is never seen with her husband in public.
And that he calls her dreadful names.
Most suspicious.
Oh, I don't believe a word of it.
Believe it or not, Mrs. Romney, my information is most reliable.
Is there any way, ladies, of overcoming this situation? I mean...
Well, you might call on Mrs. Hunter tomorrow, Mrs. Warren.
Never!
Oh, you must write her a very formal letter. Very formal, my dear. Well, asking her to call.
Ask Mrs. Hunter to come here. I think she would never set her foot in the house.
Well, At any rate, we must be doing something at once. Well, before.
Before they elope.
Oh, now, before it was too late.
Late.
Before,
Oh,
really,
my
really,
goodness.
think that,
So do you think, oh,
Ladies,
my.
ladies.
Rose,
Do you really think Betty would?
well, one never knows what to think.
Clara! Clara!
Clara enters from the hall with a letter.
Yes, ma'am?
Did you find Betty?
I went to her room again, ma'am, but she did not seem to be in, and she is nowhere in the garden.
not in her room, not in the garden.
You mean, Clara, she is nowhere to be found. Clara, was her room disturbed? I mean, did it look as if she might have left hurriedly?
Why, I didn't go in, ma'am. The door was locked.
Locked?
Locked?
Locked.
What?
Here's a note, ma'am. It was just left by Dr. Hunter's boy, ma'am.
A letter.
From Dr. Romney.
Perhaps they have eloped.
The ladies jump to their feet.
And her room locked. Well, she must have gone through the window.
Oh,
Oh,
Mrs. Warren has been too busy looking through her spectacles to notice what was going on around her.
Why, it is a letter for... Ladies, what is the matter? What has happened? Why are you all so excited?
So you understand? It's a letter from Dr. Hunter saying they have eloped.
Oh.
Betty appears in the door at left.
Ladies,
Betty! Betty! Betty!
Mother,
Betty, is that you?
oh.
why are you all so excited? Mother, what is it?
Oh.
Then you, oh, where have you been?
Why, I was just taking a little nap, Mother, really. I didn't know the ladies were here, or I should have come right down.
Then you haven't eloped?
Why, Mother dear, what do you mean?
These ladies said,
Well, now,
oh, for goodness sakes, I was only saying what I heard firsthand from a second-hand source.
Oh, Mrs. Romney, oh, dear me. I mean, oh.
Oh, my goodness.
Oh, good.
Oh.
You see, I did nothing of the sort. Betty, it was you yourself, Mrs. Lottie, who told Mrs. Pickering.
Me?
Oh, dear.
I had nothing to do with it. Nothing at all. I only know that Mrs. Lawrence said.
Oh, the impertinence of it all. Oh, my goodness. Oh.
It's a damn lie.
Oh, what has happened? I heard.
Anyway, I
dear.
do not believe.
What is it all about?
You, my dear Betty, it's all about you.
Me?
These ladies said that
These
you...
ladies.
It was not I. I again, only going on the best sources. I don't know who started
It
it.
was all of them.
Ladies.
It was all of them. Every one of them. They said you had, oh dear, I just can't say it. They came here to tell me you had eloped with a married man, with Dr. Hunter.
Ladies! Mother, how dare you? How dare you say such a thing? Oh, my poor dear mother.
And it is so untrue. Oh, Clara, Clara, my smelling salts. My smelling salts. I'm going to faint. I'm going to faint.
Oh, here, use mine, dear, use mine.
But the letter, Mrs. Warren.
Why, it's a note from
Yes?
Miss Hunter.
Oh.
Oh.
Mother, Miss Hunter asks if I might go for a carriage drive with her this afternoon to gather wildflowers. She's going to stop for me. She says the doctor told her how very fond I am of flowers.
Oh,
May I go?
why, yes, dear, if you think.
I fear these ladies were quite mistaken about.
These ladies indeed. Do you not include yourself? That is to say, you are not one of us?
Oh, God forbid.
Oh,
Not ourselves.
Oh, Clara! Clara!
Clara enters.
Did you call me, ma'am?
Clara, there was someone at the door.
Very well, ma'am.
She goes out.
I am sure Mrs. Warren will forgive our very grave mistake, but it was for her sake that we
How
were
could
saved.
you ever dream of worrying my dear mother by such scandalous gossip? It is shameful.
Betty! Betty!
You, my dear, are still too young to understand.
Clara enters.
I feel we were over quick in our judgment.
Yes. Clara?
It is Mrs. Hunter, ma'am.
Mrs. Hunter. Do have her come right in, Clara.
Yes, ma'am. Shall I bring more tea, ma'am?
Yes, Clara. And cake, Clara.
Yes, ma'am.
She goes.
Ooh, shall we stay or shall we go? It might be embarrassing. I'm
sure
Hunter.
Mrs.
Oh
Hunter
my
would-
Oh,
I don't know
ladies,
what she's
I
going to think about all this.
I'm sure.
And we must ask her to join the Helping Hands Society.
Well, I'm sure she will have some
I'm
good
sure-
ideas.
very much
So
so.
excited.
The ladies very properly arrange their dresses and bonnets as the curtain falls.